E-mountain bikes were designed to be ridden in the nastiest conditions possible. Mud, rain, they love it. It's where they can actually outperform a standard mountain bike. However, if you're not taking the right precautions and doing the right things on your e-mountain bike, one ride in winter conditions can make that bike look pretty shabby. So today, taking a look at a few tips to survive winter. So first up, you should buy yourself a decent set of mud guards. Not only do they protect you, they're going to protect your bike. Now these come in front and rear specific, all different shapes and sizes. Let's take a run through of all those different mud guards. So the options for a front mud guard are pretty simple. You have these flap style of mud guards, which are super simple to fit, they're super cheap and do a really good job of protecting all that spray from the front wheel. Although if you're going pretty fast, sometimes you're going to get mud past this guard and can actually get on the bike and over you. So I suggest you go into a bigger front mud guard, kind of like this Moto style one as well. These are really good at protecting the bike and you from all that spray from the front wheel. You can literally ride with no eyewear on this because it does such a good job of protecting all that spray, and your bike won't get covered in mud as well. So a really good option for an e-bike is to go for that bigger front mud guard. So the options for the rear of the bike. Now there's a few different mud guards. There's a basic minimalistic mud guard. This is really cool. It just clips underneath the seat rails. What it's going to do is just protect you from that spray from the back wheel. You will obviously get a bit of overspray from that if you're going to go fast, but for commuting and light road work, that's going to save you from getting a wet behind. Now this is an interesting little guard. This is basically a rear mud guard. It doesn't necessarily protect you so much, it protects more of the bike and the linkage, and what it's going to do is just stop that build up of dirt coming behind the linkage plate and the shocks and things like that. And so it's going to cut down on the amount of time you're going to spend washing the bike and getting all that mud build up behind there and into the motor, and it stops that water from getting into the motor as well. Now if you want to protect yourself from the mud, there is no other option than a big rear mud guard such as this one. This clips onto the seat stays of the bike, and what it does is protects all that spray coming at you from the back wheel. Now these can get a bit heavy, especially if you get a lot of mud on them and you're flapping around on the trails. So if you are charging the downhill stuff and jumping your bike, something like this might not work for you, but if you're riding cross country, trails and road work, this is the best job for protecting you from all that rear wheel spray and mud. So before winter really sets in, it's worth whipping the battery out of your e-bike, especially if you just charge your battery in the bike all times. You don't ever take the battery out. It's just worth checking those connections in the back of the battery in the frame, just to make sure there's no debris and wetness getting in there. If there is, you need to clean it out. Just make sure there's good contact in there. And a really nice way of stopping water getting into that connection is by using dielectric grease. And that will actually perform a barrier to stop water getting in and improve the connection between the battery and the connection. Now the motor on your e-bike is pretty well protected from the elements. It has outer plastic casings on it that's going to protect it from all that debris that's going to fire up from the wheels. Now a really good thing to do before winter is just inspect that motor covering, just inspect it for loose bolts and cracks. And a lot of them will actually have a drain hole in the bottom of it. So just whip off those outer motor covers. I stress that enough because you don't want to go into the motor inner metal covers. Just these outer plastic ones actually house the motor. But in there you'll find just a housing in there. As I say, just make sure there's not a build-up of dirt in there, because if you get water going in there, it's going to sit with that debris and it could essentially flood that whole area. So it's really essential that drain hole is unplugged to allow the water to drain out the motor casing. If you're riding muddy trails and you haven't got a front mud guard fitted, then one bearing that is in the direct firing line of all that debris and water of the front wheel is going to be your lower headset bearing. Now this is going to be straight in there and it's literally going to get jet washed by all that spray off the front tyre. So it's a really good idea just to drop the forks out, service that headset and just stick a bit of extra grease, especially around that lower bearing race. That's going to create another seal to protect you from all that water that's driving in off the front wheel. Whilst you've got the headset out, it's really important to inspect the seals and the bearings and replace if necessary. Now a muddy bike is a heavy bike and a heavy bike is an inefficient bike, so you're going to be losing out a little bit out on the trails. Now this little hack is borrowed from motocross. Now on a motocross bike you have loads of area that mud can build up It could become a nightmare when you come to wash it, as well as all that weight from the mud that's going to be built up on the bike. Now this, you just need to get a bit of sponge or a bit of foam and cut it to size, custom bit that's going to fit in all those little crevices and holes that a potential build-up of mud could occur. Now this is just around the back of the battery. Cut it to size, it's just going to fit down there. Not only is it going to stop that mud building up, it's going to cut down on washing time as well. Now the tyres you run on your e-bike for winter is something you definitely want to take a look at. These can play a massive part in how the bike's going to perform out on the trail. Starting with the back of the bike, you want a rear tyre that's going to provide a lot of drive up those really wet and slippy climbs. As well as when it comes to downhill, you want something that's going to be hooking up. And on the front, you want something that, again, is going to bite hard in those corners, but it's going to clear easy. So there is a lot of mud-specific tyres out there, but these can be quite draggy, especially if you're not riding just pure mud. If you're riding things like fire road and road sections, linking those trails together, they can take a lot of range out of the battery. So really worth looking at a tyre that's going to tick all of those boxes, not just necessarily a mud-specific one. The chain on your e-bike is one of the most important parts of your bike that you need to take care of over the winter months. If you're taking bad care of your chain, it's simply going to accelerate all that wear on the components and on the drivetrain. One thing you need to get in the habit of is degreasing and lubing that chain before and after every ride, and using the right lube. Now you might be thinking what I mean by the right lube. Now you're going to get wet and dry lube. For winter and rain and horrible slop, you need to be using wet lube. If you use dry lube, that's simply going to come off as soon as any water gets in contact with it. The thing is, with wet lube, it penetrates the rollers on the chain a lot deeper, and it simply won't wash off as soon as you hit any water. One thing that can take an absolute hammering over the winter months is your brake pads. Not only is it because you're going to be using your brakes maybe that a little bit more, it's because of all the grinding paste that actually is going to flick up onto the rotors and be transferred onto those pads. And when you pull the brake on, you've got that horrible grit and grime, and then you're squeezing it onto metal, so it's going to wear those pads out a lot faster. Now one thing you should consider doing is, if you're running organic brake pads, is swapping them out to sintered. Sintered pads going to give you a lot longer brake life when it comes to those horrible winter months. One thing that can age a brand new bike is cable rub, crank rub. It's all those unsightly areas on your bike where you've got nice paint and you're suddenly met by a horrible shiny area where cable's been rubbing, and this is only going to be accelerated as soon as you enter nature's grinding paste into the mix. It's simply going to rub that metal right down to the bare aluminium or carbon or whatever your bike's made out of. Now a really good way of protecting against this is simply by using stick-on protective patches or Invisiframe kits that you can pretty much place over the bike, over either the whole bike or on areas that are going to be prone to cable rub, such as the head tube and your rear chainstays. And aftermarket, you can sometimes get some crank protectors as well, because between your shoe and the crank, it's quite a common place to get a lot of grinding paste mixed in with that aluminium, and soon a black crank can be turned to silver quite easily. So it's really worth protecting those high wear bits on your bike, just identifying them before you get out there. Just spin the bars, look to where the cable rubs, and get something stuck over it before it goes back to bare aluminium. Something a lot of pro riders do when the conditions get real slippy and nasty is do a few mods to their bikes. Now I've seen the downhill guys even add bits of tyre to their saddles just to give them a little more grip and purchase from the saddle. Now something you guys can do to your cockpit area of your bike, like your controls, your brake levers, your gear shifter, your dropper, is to add a little bit of grip tape to it. This is pretty much sticky back sandpaper, so you can get on your controls, add that to all your little bits that you're going to be pushing, that you can potentially slide around on. Just means that it's going to be there when you've got wet and muddy hands on all those controls. So there you go. I don't want to hear any excuses about not getting out there on those nasty winter rides. But if you guys got any more tips you want to add, drop them in the comments box down below about how you protect your e-bike in the winter months. Don't forget, if you want to stick around and see more videos, check me out riding in the mud down here. That was a pretty nasty one. Don't forget to subscribe to EMBN, and if you're already subscribed, smash the notification bell in the corner to get a notification every time we upload a video. Don't forget to give a thumbs up, like as well, and we shall see you in the next one.